Hi, it's Jeff here from discoverdouble-bass.com, where you can go to learn all about the double bass. And I am joined by one of my favourite people. It's the incredible jazz bassist, Russell Hall. Russell, thanks for joining me today.
Oh man, the honor's all mine. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's just so good to see you. And last time I saw you, you were using a beautiful double bass by Randy Hunt, which we loved using.
Oh yes.
That had a big sound. It had like
So
steel
incredible.
strings on. Well, actually, it was a Piastro Perpetuals.
Yeah.
But today we're joined by a dear lady, Bessie, and the course that you filmed was called Bessie's Bass Busters. So I thought while we're in town, we have to come and meet you and meet the star of the show. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Bessie and where she's from?
Well, Bessie is a 1933 Master of Art Juzek. So pre-World War II.
Oh, I can see the label inside. Yeah.
She's not that big. This is a smaller, 3/4 instrument. And it's a funny story. The bassist with Wynton Marsalis and the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, Carlos Henriquez.
Yeah.
He is kind of like a used bass salesman. He turns basses around.
Every time I see him selling a bass, it's always some incredible instrument as well.
Oh yeah.
For
many years.
Carlos has a lot of cool basses.
And
passing
he
his
would
hands.
do it like every 6 months.
Yeah.
He was changing instruments. And I remember there was a period of time he was playing this bass, and he had this for about roughly a year, and it was a Canon. He used to hike the strings up super high, all gut strings, also made by Per Astro Cordas, his own model Cordas. And I was doing, at the time I had a great bass, I had a Colstein bass, but it was huge. I mean, and it was a flatback. And it got kind of damaged, kind of banged up, and I could never figure out what the issue was with the buzzing and stuff. But it served me so well for many years. And we were in the middle of a recording session, and I get a text from Carlos like, "Hey man, I'm selling my Juzek. Do you want it?" And I know about Carlos. He sold basses to every bass player in New York, and he just finds them. Like
finds
it's
the
his
diamonds.
job. He finds the diamonds, especially Ben Wolf's bass. Oh man.
Did he get that from Carlos?
Yeah, Ben Wolf's bass. Matt Ribicki, I think.
I've seen him selling a few basses, and they've always been really interesting instruments.
Oh yeah, I think Phil Norris too. A lot of people, and he's known to do this. He'll buy the bass, fix it up, get it fully restored, and then sell it. But he also has his gorgeous French bass that he always plays.
Is that the one that he's on now? Yeah.
Yeah. So he just said, "Listen, man, my wife's trying to get this bass out of the garage. So I'll give it to you for $2,500, and this bass is, easily like $20,000. For the history and also the sound and just the general. It's hard to get.
So how old is this bass?
This bass is going to be 90 years old next year.
Oh, so congratulations!
It's
Happy
89,
birthday!
Yeah.
So how long have you had Bessie for?
I've had Bessie for almost 8 years, man.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll ever really own another instrument. For years, you're taught, you have to have the biggest, loudest bass that you could find, and like a giant Hawks bass or a Martin bass, and I'm like, I love those basses, but after 2 tunes and a couple songs at 300 BPM, you'll be like, oh my God, ow, So this bass was really there's a couple things that have been the greatest blessings of my life. Yeah. And one of them is this bass, because when I got this bass, it was like my destiny. It's like when Jack Sparrow finds a black pearl or something, that's what this bass is to me. It's my black pearl, because it's small, but the sound just like lasts forever on this instrument, and it's completely even everywhere on the instrument,
It's got a really consistent sound.
Yeah.
It's really.
Yeah, and also, I had a couple, recently I had a restoration of the instrument, so I got all the seams fixed, I got cracks that I didn't even know were cracks fixed. And
can we just hear you play some walking bass?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I just need to hear.
Yeah, I mean, this is my, I love that bass that I played in Nashville, but man, this is synonymous with me. I mean, it's so funny too, because my nickname has become Bessie, because I was just calling this bass Bessie. Like, oh, I gotta put Bessie in the Uber, or oh man, I gotta get Bessie's M pin fixed or something. And then it got to a point where people just started calling me Bessie. So we're one and the same now.
Bessie and the Rainbow Kids as well.
Yeah, that's the name of my band, and
And so tell us a little bit about, you had some restoration work done on it. Who was it who fixed this up for you?
Zachary Lane.
Okay, I've heard great things about his work.
Oh man, I love his work because he's so personal and he's so chill about everything. It's not, sometimes when you go into a luthier shop, it can be a daunting and expensive experience, but man, for all the work that he did, it was really worth my buck, Brand new bridge, he grafted my fingerboard. Carlos used to have an extension on here, and it used to drive me nuts because the sweet spot of the natural sweet spot of the bass, was extended. So I was like playing down here, and I loved it because you could get up to like a high D or something. But when am I ever gonna play high D? On some jazz gigs, except with the harmonic maybe. But yeah, he had the fingerboard grafted, new strings, new end pin.
How about people going to be saying, what about your string heights and stuff? Is it fair? It looks fairly medium to me.
Yeah, it's medium, This is as low as my, because he crafted this new bridge.
Yeah.
So it's like the grooves are pretty shallow, and then the nut up here, the grooves are also pretty shallow.
But it's really like, it's really clear sound. There's no kind of dead spots or anything.
I've toyed with every kind of string, every kind of action you could possibly imagine, and from years of doing this, I've learned the worst thing you can do is hurt yourself in the process. So that's why I keep my strings medium to low. Medium just enough that you can get your finger under the string and you can still pull some sound out. But not too high that you can't play fast. Just enough that I can, just enough that I can still get to my thing, but not too low where now I have to rely on the amp to produce sound. Most of the time people want to hear the bass. They want to hear this box push out air. So.
And in terms of strings, I've never actually seen this set before. Tell us about what you've got on here.
I've got the Ava Perazzi slaps. So I like these because I'm very eco-animal friendly, and I love the sound of gut strings, and I've been playing gut strings for years, but because it hurts the animal in the process, I've kind of shied away from them. So
because don't they do a version that's gut and a version that's synthetic? Is that the synthetic?
Yeah. There's a version that has 2 gut strings at the top, 2 raw gut strings, and then synthetic at the bottom, or maybe wrap gut at the bottom. But these are all synthetic. So.
I think it gives it that really like even sound.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find with basses, when you've got that gut string sound, it sounds great at home. Then you get on a gig and you struggle to kind of hear yourself. Do you ever? find that?
I learned that the hard
way.
I learned that the hard way.
Do you just get past it, or learn to hear it better, or?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, because of the evolution of cymbals as well, the evolution of instruments.
Wow.
Gut strings have a tendency not to cut through a band depending on what cymbals they use. If I'm playing with a drummer and they're using like old K's or old A's or something that's really dry, then the gut string just sings, or like a Bosphorus cymbal.
Yeah.
But if you get something that is super bright and super loud, like something by Paiste or Mino or Sabian, something that is of a brighter tendency, like gut strings are gonna get.
I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, so I've always had to be mindful of this. The kind of music I play too, like if I'm playing more modern music with mixed meter, or if I'm playing, something that requires the bass to actually be louder, or for my technique to be different, then it's not as advantageous. But the thing that with steel strings that I didn't really like was, number one, the tension, like always damaged my instrument. Because these are so low tension, the bridge is just sitting there. Like I could move the bridge right now with the strings there, and I think that helps the bass to breathe. Because if you think about it, it's still a tree. It's still a part of a tree. It needs air. It needs a lack of tension in order for it to really speak well.
We all do.
I love the I love these strings. I've been using them for a year, and they've been the most bang for my buck in terms of.
If Piastro are watching, I think we need a Russell Hall signature set of all synthetic gut strings. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Piastro people, you know what to do. So just moving on quickly, in terms of if you are amplified, are you using a realist? What are you
I
getting into?
use just a normal realist pickup.
Any amp or just whatever's in the club?
Whatever's in the club usually, amp du jour, bass du jour. My preference is the realist. It's been the most consistent pickup, and I also like the fact, as opposed to the Fishman pickup, it doesn't attach itself to the bridge, which can be kind of a drag if you're some days
catch it.
If I'm playing a trad gig, I might hike up my strings like one rotation around, or if I'm playing like if I'm playing more difficult music or something that requires faster passages, I'll lower my, so it's not the most advantageous for what I do. So the realist, because it just goes under the foot, it makes it super simple. It's the pickup that everyone uses. I also use the DPA microphone. I have it in my case with me at all times.
Ooh.
And
we'll come to that in just a second. I just remembered about your case. But what about some quick things? So you're saying you use the DPA. Is that on gigs or is that in the studio? Or?
That's on both. I use it in the studio and on gigs. It has been the best microphone that I've used.
The DPA,
And the most, because I always go with what is user-friendly. Kind of like an iPhone. You have to treat equipment like an iPhone. It's, though it's already figured out for you, it is the most user-friendly. The realist is the most user-friendly. They're kind of like Tomastics in a certain way, or Tomastics are the most user-friendly string. It's what we're all familiar with. Just like that, the DPA is the most, you just mount it on the E and G string and
bang,
goes through the bridge, and you have a beautiful sounding instrument.
When you're in a studio like this, we've got this beautiful microphone set up here, this gorgeous ribbon mic at the bottom. Do you have any kind of preference, or do you just say to the engineer, you guys know what you're doing? If you're going into a session, you're not one of those guys that says, I want this, or...
Oh, well, it depends. If I'm in a space where, RE20 is available. Yeah. That is always my go-to microphone because it provides this, it's the classic sound, it's what Ray Brown used, it's what my teacher John Clayton used, or still uses rather. I would have it in my case if I could lug that heavy thing around, but that's usually my go-to if I'm in the studio. I love these beautiful, old school ribbon mics, and I love to see what kind of microphones people use. But to be honest, I try not to focus too much on equipment because my other teacher, Ben Wolf, one thing he always said to me was, "Let me ask you a question. If Billie Holiday was singing on a SM58 or a ribbon microphone, could you still tell it was Billie Holiday?" I was like, well, I never thought about that, but yeah, I probably could. And so I try to be from years of arguing with sound engineers and years of playing whatever kind of bass, whatever kind of amp, I've learned that adaptability is the key to evolution and the key to having a prolonged career in the music.
And just lastly, to finish off, we've got, we were chatting earlier about you had the great pleasure of playing a duet with Christian McBride recently on the Emmet's Place show. And did you say that Christian played your bass at one point?
Well, he played it at the end of the session because he was talking to me like, man, I was wondering, man, my fingers, I got all kind of blood blisters that I'm playing, you know, because his one comment that people were always saying on the live stream when we played the duet was that his bass was so loud. He has this huge Australian bass and he has the Tomastix on there, and one comment was like his bass is significantly louder than Russell's bass, and I think that's because he plays these Tomastix, and you know Tomastix, you put them on a bass, they're just gonna like scream out, you know. So and my bass is much more of a dark, you know,
it's rich.
It's more of like a, you know, I kind of think of it, the difference between like an Audi or, you know, a Tesla or something. You know, it's a very specific taste kind of thing, you know, because I love the old school records, Paul Chambers.
I can hear that history though when you're playing, you know.
But he played my bass and he's like, man, I was wondering why you were able to play so fast and not be in pain, because your strings are so low tension. And I was like, yeah, you know, that's how I survive out here, is having these strings that don't hurt me, you know. And now my calluses thank me so much. I used to be in pain all the time, man. My fingers would just be chewed up after years of gigs. So
you're out there in New York gigging all the time. So that's the thing, is that, and I guess Christian sounds like Christian, if he's playing your bass, if he's playing whatever.
Yeah, and he sounded exactly the same. It just was clearly the sound of my bass.
Oh man, well I'm waiting for that duo record, because you two, Christian and Russell, and obviously we'll link below to the video. And lastly, we need to give a shout out to this incredible case here, Russell. You were turned up, I've seen a lot of cases. This has to be the all-time coolest. Just tell us what's going on with this. Thank you, Sean. What's going on here with this beauty? This is incredible. And the colours of this, but I've never seen a two-tone case before.
Well, this case, it's funny because it just came in the mail like 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And I got it from this guy based in Kentucky who runs a company called Messina Covers.
Yeah.
And they, you know, because Meridian stopped making cases, I used to, you know, I had the classic black Meridian case, and it had seen so much battle. It was chewed apart by dogs. The zipper, all of the zippers were broken.
On the way home from a gig.
No, just one small dog that belonged to my roommate at the time. So for a while, my case was so messed up, man. So like, I was, you know, waiting to get this case made and you know, for the price and the customization.
And you've got the name here as well. I don't know if you can see this. Beautiful Bessie written out there, so we know no one's going to steal. I just love the colours, and I love the fact that the colours kind of match what you're wearing as well.
Oh yeah, well, you know, I'm from the Caribbean, so I'm a colourful guy, you know. So
I bet you get a lot of people who are going to comment on how cool this case is.
Oh, they love it, man. You know, at the end of the day, it's just a case. It's what's inside the case that counts. But you know, at least now I can pull up to the gig in style. You know, and I thought about the colours too, you know, because I love New Orleans, and New Orleans is a very important place to me, probably the most important place next to Jamaica in my life. And, you know, these colors represent the city of New Orleans. So I was like, you know, yeah, let's get a purple case. You know, and Bessie is a queen, so she needs something royal. She needed some royal purple and some you know, forest green. I remember when I ordered it. And I almost put Captain Bessie on there, you know, but
not letters.
But it wasn't big enough of a label. So I'm just grateful that I'm able to now have a fully functioning case, and you know, it's actually been a blessing because it fits my bass perfectly, and it actually minimizes, you know, because sometimes you get these cases with like straps to wrap around the neck so that it's not just drooping all over the place. But this one, it fits so perfect. It's like a perfect fit, Cinderella.
Yeah, well, it's so cool to hear about these Messina covers, and thank you so much for bringing Bessie in to introduce us. And you know, we've worked hard, or you worked hard, presenting this incredible course all about your kind of approach, your personal approach to jazz bass, and it's called Bessie's Bass Busters. So I just encourage everyone listening, if you want to check out more of Russell's music, to go and have a look at that. But also, where can people find you online? You've got is it russellhall.com?
Yeah, russellhallbass.com.
Russell Hall.
If you look up Russell Hall
Who's got
online, well, because of the ununique nature of my name.
Oh, man.
Well,
someone beat you to it.
Well, not even someone. I'll much say something. All around the world, there are probably hundreds of Russell Halls, like Russell performance centers, you know. So that's you know, you'll find there's actually a Russell Hall at Columbia,
really?
On 121st Street and Broadway. So if you drive by Columbia University, you'll see a building called Russell Hall. So I mean, man, literally there have been hundreds of Russell Halls. You know, my name is not really that unique, so in addition to buildings, there's also, you know, you'll find lawyers and gardeners and all different all sorts of people called Russell Hall.
And we want Russell Hall Bass. So
russellhallbass.com.
Please go and check out Russell's website, follow his incredible music, his live streams with Emmett's Place with Emmet Cohen and Kyle Poole. All the great work you're doing, Russell. Thank you so much for joining me. And we might even be lucky to cut to a little clip of you playing now as well, if you've got a moment. That would be really cool. So
cool, yeah.
But thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, Russell.
Thank you, man.
Great, man. It's so good to hear you play.
Oh, man. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you, man.